What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's going on with the economic calendar moving forward, what's going on with other factors involved in the markets, and what you should be watching for as time progresses. But before I begin doubles information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Weeble and deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks, and the offer ends tomorrow, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, for Tesla, we have a very, very nice looking cup and handle like structure that's kind of developing right here, and there is more upside potential if we could break some key levels, but the question is which levels are those and what's going to likely happen as time goes on. So I'll break down more details about this and talk about the bigger picture for Tesla, but I first want to talk about some data. Note that's tomorrow. It's going to be Monday, June 24th, 2024. Okay, in the early morning, we have Waller from the Fed giving a speech. Then we also have the Dallas Fed Manufacturing Index report coming out at 10:30 a.m. Not to mention the bill auctions coming out at 11:30 a.m. too. That's going to be very important. Not to mention Dowley giving a speech. So I just want to note that Waller is known for being kind of in the middle, not too hawkish, not too dovish. His name is actually right here. A little bit more on the hawkish side, but it's not that crazy. And we also have Dowley from the Fed, who tends to be in the middle too. So both of them are just not, not way too hawkish, kind of like so. But Bowman is known for being very hawkish. Remember, Bowman's going to be the most hawkish, and he tends to speak on Tuesday. So I can't wait to see what he ends up saying. So just be prepared for that, at least going into Tuesday, alongside these other Fed pieces of data. I'll focus more on Tuesday a little bit later on, but just notes the data I just called out, from the manufacturing index reports to the bill auctions. Now, moving forward, I just want to note that this week is going to be very important because it's going to be the last week of June, and that's also going to be the last week of the second quarter of 2024. And generally, during the last week of a quarter, we tend to see a lot of volatility, especially for the last couple of days. So that's going to be very important. For earnings, we have very important earnings coming out for the next couple of weeks. This week is going to be very quiet, but then starting, I would say, like next week and like in 2 weeks from now, we have a bunch of big tech earnings coming out, not to mention important data. So I can't wait to see what happens with very important earnings. But for now, don't worry about big tech. We're just going to focus on this. We have Money Hero announcing earnings on Monday. For Tuesday, we have FedEx and a few others. For Wednesday, we have Paychex and General Mills, not to mention Nike on Thursday. So watch this very, very carefully, at least for earnings. Nothing is too insane yet until we get to like the next week. Now, the fear and greed index is currently at fear. This is the overall sentiment right now, the overall emotion driving the markets. Despite the fact that momentum is still at a high value, it's still at greed. It's only at this high value because there's a lot of buyers that still exist. They're still, once again, defending the markets, and they're still holding us at a very high level compared to where we have been. So we're still in strong momentum. The market's actually still in a very, very massive uptrend. This is kind of like what momentum is telling us. However, the emotion at these high levels is still in favor of fear. So the momentum is strong. We're still holding up well. We're still on an uptrend, even if SPY does dip more. But as we're at these high levels, the market is fearful now. It's kind of like apprehensive about how things are going to go forward. The puts and call option positioning is also at greed right now. You guys can see this quite clearly. Greed is making up the majority of sentiment. And we're actually seeing a little increase in this. Now, why is this important? That's because we used to be extremely greedy. Now we're just greedy because we're starting to see some more puts being bought and calls being closed. So the market's kind of shifting. Market volatility is also neutral. We will see if we can actually approach the 50 daily moving average and see how things go from there. The Cybertrucks are also picking up their sales. It could be a very polarizing EV push for Tesla's market share. And that's something that's worth noting, as Musk has been talking about scaling it up very, very soon. And it's actually very, very great for them moving forward. But just notes that when it comes to these Cybertrucks, in May, they sold nearly 3,000 of them with an average price exceeding $100,000. This is showing signs of surging sales for them as they're very popular, and we're seeing nice looking growth. But just notes that the Cybertruck sales have begun right over here at this price. We are starting to see prices once again going up a bit, and we're starting to see a lot of buyers still stepping in. So there's a lot of anticipation for the Cybertruck and its growth, and I'm seeing a lot of talk about this. You can see it over here as well. The sales are continuing to heat up, and we've sold over 8,000 in total since January. So the sales are just going to help Tesla, in my personal opinion. Now, I also want to note that there's been a lot of talk about the Cybertruck with lots of cargo. There's been one that was spotted somewhere in the US, and I think that's actually very cool. I think it's very, very cool to see that this was going on, and I think it's very, very awesome, in my personal opinion, with these new developments. So, with all this talk right over here, with this Cybertruck, once again, being seen in Texas, I think it's very, very cool to see them being hauled with their towing capacities. And there's so much more you could do with it. So we've seen a lot of viral videos about that. But the Cybertruck is going to be just one big component, at least for this. I also want to just mention that we have Tesla sales coming out for Q2 towards the end of this, not the end of this month, but early next month, I would say. So within a week and a half from now, a little bit over a week from now. So that's going to be the next big catalyst for Tesla. Volume is kind of low at 63 million, nothing too crazy. That's why Tesla's kind of flat, a little bit in the green, but nothing too crazy. And the volume is once again just continuing to the short volume. Excuse me, the short volume is going up just a bit. Morgan Stanley gave Tesla an overweight rating, saying it's going to outperform the markets. The price price ratio is kind of flat right now. And we tend to see more volatility, especially on Mondays for the upside. So that's what I'm seeing, at least for Tesla. Now, the question is what's going to happen moving forward, in my personal opinion. I'll be breaking down more details for you guys. So, looking at Tesla, I just want to note that right now we have a nice looking wedge that's developing. We have this 183 resistance of this price. I'll be looking for 185. And if we end up rejecting, if we lose 182.5, I'll be looking for a dip down to 180, where our 200 EMA happens to be. Losing this opens the doors for 178. So I think that it's very important to watch these levels on Tesla. Overall, though, it does look like it's trying to bounce. I think there's a good chance that that's going to happen. So I think we could see a little bit of a push just temporarily, and then we'll have to see if Tesla could hold. The 4 hours also showing some signs of a nice double bottom and nice little bounce right here. And we have a very, very nice looking inverse head and shoulders. So far, so good from Tesla. With this inverse head and shoulders, and also because of the fact that we have this imbalance to fill all the way up here towards the 200 area, things are looking pretty good for the stock, in my opinion. So in my personal opinion, with the inverse head and shoulders right over here, there's a very good chance that Tesla will continue to climb towards that 200 area as long as we hold above 167 and continue our uptrend. Now, this could be a stop depending on news, depending on how other factors look, but overall, the stock is still holding up. On the 4 hour time frame, we're also on a bit of an uptrend right here, holding our key support, so it's looking pretty good. So this looks to me like it's going to try to push this imbalance towards 185, and we'll have to see if we can hold that or not. If we break through that, 188 is going to be our next target. I think there's a good chance we'll push higher, so this is looking more bullish, at least from a technical standpoint. Now for SPY, I just want to mention that SPY has two main gaps, okay? There's one gap above around 547. There's also a gap below at 537. I excuse me, I presume that this gap at 537 will get filled, but it's possible we kind of pop a bit to fill this gap and then we drop down to fill the gap down here, or we just drop straight from here to fill that gap. I'll be watching to see which one this ends up uh, uh, doing, right, out of these both possibilities, right? But here's what I'm saying, okay? Watch these levels very carefully. Let me show you what they are. We have this resistance around 545.8. If we break through this, we'll be looking for the gap fill at 547. If we lose support at 544, I'll be looking for a dip down to 537 as well. So we'll just have to see how things end up going. Overall, I think that we have to watch these levels because SPY was trading very sideways on Fridays, didn't have too much volume. The reason it was trading sideways is because we had the OPEX options expirations. Lots of these options were expiring. So SPY is stuck within the middle of this range. So I'll watch and see which way we end up breaking. Lose support at 544, we're going to be dipping down lower, break 545.8, and then we'll be dipping, or we'll be pushing up to fill this gap. So we'll just have to give this, excuse me, we'll just have to give this some time just to see how things end up going. But I think we're most likely going to be coming down to about 537 to fill our main gap down there. But before we come down to 537, we might pop first to fill this gap and then drop, or we might just drop straight up from here if we end up losing 544. So that's why I'm talking about watching these levels. But ultimately, I do see 537 as the target, and we'll see if we bounce off that or not. For Tesla, Tesla has this nice wedge, so it's looking pretty good. This could actually outperform SPY in the market despite how things are looking because there might be some excitement with the fact that we have deliveries coming out next week. So just want to keep that in your guys' minds. By the way, I just want to call that out one more time. That's going to be something else that's worth noting. For Bitcoin, Bitcoin's looking kind of weak right now. I do see a previous support retest right here around this 64,000 area that could be coming. Then a rejection back down. I think we may just continue to downtrend from here all the way down to the 62,500 area. So we look bearish on Bitcoin. Could pop and then drop first, but I'll be watching that very carefully. For Nvda, Nvidia is trying to rebound a bit. If we do end up getting a little rebound, I'll be looking at the 1 hour 20 EMA. This 128 area is our resistance, not to mention 130's resistance. If we end up losing 125, we'll be dipping down all the way down to lower levels. So I'll be watching to see if that ends up being the case. But I think we could rebound first, and we'll see if we reject. But I think that Nvidia is going to try to rebound a little bit. So look for a little bounce towards 128 and 130, and we'll see if we get a rejection or not. So be very, very patient. For the QQQ, The QQQ also is kind of in the middle right here. If we end up breaking past the 481s, I'll be looking at a test of 482.5. Then breaking that opens the doors for these imbalances to fill for 484. If we end up losing support at 480, if we close below that, I'll be looking for a dip all the way down to about the mid 470s. 476 would likely be coming. So those are your main levels. So basically, lose 480, I would favor bears a bit more for 478, and then break past 481. I'll be looking for a test of 482.5. Breaking that then opens the doors for a bigger push. Otherwise, we're just kind of range bound, but I do favor downside on the QQQ since we're looking a little bit more bearish on the trend. For Apple is going to likely dip towards our 200 EMA, which I think is going to be at 206. I think 206 is going to come on Apple. If we break through this, if we bounce, look for a retest of 210. If we lose that, we'll be dipping all the way down to 202. My gut tells me it's going to continue to fall as Apple's looking pretty weak right now. There's a good chance it may continue to downtrend. It is kind of oversold, so look for a temporary bounce before it continues lower. But I still think the trend looks more bearish on Apple. With that being said, guys, that's it for the main five I typically talk about. Now I just want to shift your focus on the rest of the stocks out there. So starting off with Palantir. Palantir has been on a bit of a downtrend. It is trying to push on the 1 hour, but when you zoom out and look at the 4 hour, you guys can see we're at this key support right here. So if we could bounce off 23.8, look for a bounce and a retest of 24.6. If we lose 23.8, we'll be tipping all the way down to 23.5. So we'll just have to see how things end up going. But there is a risk of us dipping lower on Palantir, so we'll just have to see if that ends up being the case. And I'll be very, very patient in the process for now. So I think that this is going to likely dip down to the 22.5 area. I think there's a very good chance that that's going to happen. We will see if we pop first and then drop. We're going to drop from here, but that's going to be very, very probable. For Supermicro, if we look we end up dipping towards 894, there's going to be a big dip coming all the way down to the 880 area and then 860. If we bounce off this, we'll be looking for a push towards 900, and if that ends up if we break past that, we'll be looking at 920 to be retested. But in my personal opinion, this is looking more bearish. It favors that's going to lose 894 and start dipping to 860. There's a very good chance it's going to dip lower, so I think 880 and 860 are very probable. For Rivian, we're looking a little bit more bearish. I just want to call out that there are some buyers defending 10.2, but just note that this could go a little lower towards about 9.9 before we try to bounce. That's the previous support. So I see a little bit more downside as a strong possibility than a bounce after that. So watch for that very carefully. For SoFi, we're on a bit of a downtrend right here on SoFi. I do think there's going to be a retest of 6.45 coming, and we'll see if you reject or not. But look for a pop for 4.45, then we'll see if you reject or not. But look for a little bounce on SoFi for now, and we'll see how we end up reacting. For the IWM Russell 2000, it's likely going to try to rebound a bit. I'll be looking for 201.34 tomorrow. If we break through this, look for 202.35. I'll be watching resistance. I think it's going to pop a bit to the 201 area, but watch to see if you get a rejection again, because one thing that's happening is it's like kind of popping, then dropping, popping and dropping, popping and dropping, might pop again and eventually come back down lower. So just be careful with this test of 201 to 202. For a pop and drop, that's also very probable. For AMD has support currently at 160. If we lose that, we'll be dipping lower. If we hold this, we will be rebounding up towards 162.5. We also have this gap to fill up here, so I'll give this some time, but I am seeing some potential for a dip. If we lose 160, look for a bigger drop, and there's a good chance that's going to happen. So just be careful. I do see that as a high probability. So to drop to 158. We have resistance currently at 160.5 on ARM, and we have support currently at 150.8, not to mention 157. My gut is telling me, excuse me, that ARM is looking a little bit more bearish. That 157 is going to likely be retested. So we'll see if we end up rejecting off that or not. But look for a test of 157. If we lose that, we'll be dipping lower. So watch that very carefully. For coin, the 4 hour is showing a double top like structure. We're looking a little bit weak right over here. I think that there's a chance that we could be tipping all the way down towards 218 and eventually 213. Look for a pop and then a drop back down lower. So I'll be watching that as well. Coinbase is looking a little bit weaker to me. So it might pop back up to like 228 to 230, then reject lower and start sinking even lower. Still looks a little bit more bearish to me. For Amazon, we're looking more bullish because we have a nice cup and handle, and I think we want to be going all the way up towards the 190 area. So look for 190 to 192 on Amazon. I think we might push a little higher towards that, and we'll see how we end up reacting from there, approaching these highs. Meta's looking a little bit weaker. Depends if we can try to get back above 496. If we get back above that, look for 500. If we fail to do that, we're going to be dipping lower. This looks more bearish. It looks like it's going to be dipping all the way down towards these imbalances. I think that 492 should be watched. I think we're going to be testing that tomorrow, then 490. So I see more bearish potential, at least on Meta for the time being. For Microsoft has a nice little uptrend right here at this 450 area. There's a nice 4-hour crossover on the PPO coming, so 452 is going to be our next target. That's something else that's worth noting. For Google has a nice looking accumulation structure that's kind of forming right here. There's a very good chance we're going to be looking for 182. And if we end up rejecting, we'll be dipping all the way down towards 178. So in my personal opinion, with this nice kind of like accumulation structure, we could try to push a little higher, but we'll just have to see if that ends up continuing. Overall, Google is holding up well, so I think 182 is going to be retested, and we'll see if we reject or not. For GameStop, we're actually in a range right now. We have this range with resistance around 26.6 and support at 22.7. Looks a little bit more bearish to me, so I think we're going to likely be testing 22.7. So watch for that very carefully. Same thing on AMC. We're looking a little bit more bearish. I think we're going to fill this gap down here towards 4.3. So look for a little bit more of a dip on AMC. DJT is going to bounce on the 4 hour most likely, and retest 31, around 30 to 31. So look for a little bounce temporarily, but then we could reject off that once we test it. Okay, so look for a temporary bounce and see if we get a rejection as the most likely possibility. The VIX is also trading kind of sideways right now, not really doing a whole lot. Look at resistance currently at our 200 EMA, this 13.5 area. And if we end up rejecting, we'll be dipping back down towards 12.8. If that fails, we'll be dipping lower. The VIX could get a breakout if the market gets a rug pull. We'll have to just wait and see. So I'm being very patient for now. So I'll see what it does. But just note, we haven't officially broken past 13.5 yet. If we do get that break, then that's going to favor the market getting a bigger rug pull. Right now, the 10-year Treasury yield is going to react to what happens with these Fed speakers. So give that the time it needs. And then the dollar index is continuing to climb. We have 106 as our next resistance level. And we'll have to see how things develop from here. I think we could be pushing for 106 if this breaks. 106.5 is coming. If we reject off 106, we'll be dipping all the way down to 105.57. So I'm being very patient. I'm just going to give this some time to see. But the dollar is showing some life, which could be bearish for the markets. So with that being said, guys, I think there's a good chance that for the markets, there could be some downside coming. The market may kind of pop back up to some gap fills before it continues to get a rug pull. And that's very, very probable. But Tesla, on the other hand, is once again holding up well, building some strength. We might see Tesla try to push it for 185 tomorrow and consolidate a bit. Maybe it goes a little bit higher depending if we can break that or not. But that's going to take some time. And just know that we have deliveries coming out in about a week from now, a week and a half. So that's going to be important for Tesla too. So I can't wait to see what Tesla ends up announcing for that. That's the next major catalyst. With that being said, guys, enjoy your Sunday, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow before the market ends up opening again. All right, have a great day and peace out.